Hello, welcome into the Red Bird Reboot. This is your Arizona Cardinals podcast doing a ton of work this week. Sorry it's a little bit late in the week, obviously. Marcos and I have had a couple of crazy weeks, some procedures, some other stuff and odds and ends, but we're happy to be here to talk with you, Arizona Cardinals fans. Going over a very pivotal game this week, coming off of a 31-24 loss by the Arizona Cardinals. They fall to 1-7 on the season. Before we dig into this Ravens view, Marcos, how are you doing overall? And what's kind of the temperature of Cardinals fans? Is this more excitement, at least, that we're getting 1 week closer to Kyler Murray's return, or more trepidation knowing that there's a pretty rough game around the corner against the Cleveland Browns coming up tomorrow?
I think people are just going to be excited. And yeah, it's been a kind of an up and down week, of course. That's how life is. But as far as the temperature of the Cardinals fan, the typical Cardinals fan is now just thinking about what is Clayton Tune going to look like, for one, and two, is Kyler Murray coming back when people have been predicting, which is week 10 next week. And it would be probably a smart idea to put him back on the field at week 10, because it's a daunting task to put him out there and have Myles Garrett be on the on the defensive line and whatnot. Plus the talent that they have, the cornerbacks playing really phenomenal. That Jim Schwartz defense is really stepping up, and he's an old timer, but he's just for some reason he just doesn't go away. He's just that good, and so I got to give it to Jim Schwartz, because for a while they were the number one defense in the league, and we all saw what they did against the 49ers when we thought they were unbeatable.
Absolutely. No, so let's talk about the game here real quick with the Baltimore Ravens. It was a home game. You look at the box score, and it feels like it was a closer game than how it turned out. While at the same time, we look at the fourth quarter, it really wasn't that close of a game. Arizona scores 17 points in the fourth quarter, which is a season high for them. They previously, I believe, had scored some 7 points total in the fourth quarter up to that point. But this really was a game in which the Baltimore passing attack, the Baltimore rushing attack, didn't get off to a really big start for the most part. Arizona actually was able to score on their opening drive. They were not able to capitalize on this, and there was a couple of turnovers that you saw, particularly one from Josh Dobbs right before the half. And that ended up where, instead of it being a essentially tie game for the most part, you're talking about that Gus Edwards runs it in for 1 yard out. You go down by a score. You felt like when the second half started, the Ravens were able to essentially come out and be able to just kind of take over for the game for the most part. What we really did see in the fourth quarter, however, was a Cardinals team that didn't give up. Trey McBride at least catches his first touchdown of the season. Cardinals defense, at least, that had normally been bend but not quite breaking, did end up breaking for the most part. You did see another just terrible throw from Josh Dobbs that was airmailed over, but at the end of the day, Cardinals were able to drive down, get a touchdown pass to Marquise Brown, and then, surprise, surprise, they force a turnover on the onside kick, get the ball back, kick a field goal. You're now only down by, I believe it is, I think it's down by 8 points. Going into that last, I should say probably 7 or so. They don't get that 2-point conversion for the most part. They do kick a field goal. So it's technically still a one-score game in the very end of the game. This time, of course, Ravens, Nelson Aguilar does get the ball, and it is game over. It was a game in which it never really felt like the Cardinals were close to competing. We did also see, and think in that game, some good plays, particularly from the likes of Trey McBride, Amari DiMercato. We also saw a lot of struggles and a nearly unwatchable offense at times with Joshua Dobbs in the passing attack. And really, at the end of the day, Arizona's defense seemed like for the second week in a row they played well enough to be able to win the game, and the offense, of course, just didn't really seem to hold up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, of course, during this performance, Vance Joseph has probably his best game of the season, taking down the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was a defensive win, so you got to give him props for at least being able to do what he did with the Chiefs. And I think they turned the ball over like 5 times. I'm not 100% sure. But our defense as well has had their ups and downs as far as like yardage and points and whatnot. But they have really seemed to figure out, like, not only with the scheme that they have, what the assignments are in each scheme and what pieces to put out there. Maybe Garrett Williams, as far as like his coverage grade is concerned, I'm not sure if it was good, but the week before that when he got the interception, it wasn't good at all. But they are at least putting him out there, and he seems to be somewhat of a person who's gonna moving forward. He's gonna like start elevating his play. He's going to start being that other cornerback that maybe he could be a number one corner. At the very least, he's a high end number two, or at least that's the goal. And the goal is also just to get him to be that number one corner, because as much as I love Marco Wilson, he's just not elevating his play. In year three, those techniques that he should have been developing to be able to stack on top of his actual physical like prowess that he has, like being so fast, jumping so high, being as athletic as he is, and he's just not able to put those tools to the fullest usage, because I'm not 100% sure if it's just that he just can't be a number one corner and he flourishes being the number two, or if he plateaued at some point and people know how to attack him.
Yeah, Marco Wilson, he's giving up, I believe, a passer rating of 133 on the season. If you want to know what a perfect game looks like for a quarterback, essentially, like you think of that Kurt Warner, more touchdowns and incompletions game, that's like about 143. So you're talking about someone who almost every time that he does get targeted, he's pretty much letting up a pass. The biggest thing that he has going for him is availability. The Cardinals have had issues with their safeties being healthy this year. They've also had issues as far as being able to get some guys on the field. It seems like that we were able to see that there was a healthy scratch from the sixth-round rookie who did start this season in Keitrell Clark. We got to see a little bit more of Garrett Williams, who has probably looked the best of any corner on the team, but the sample size has been incredibly small. Really, at this point, the Cardinals are 1-7. You weren't expecting them to be able to win against the Ravens. And the fact that the team is still playing hard, and you're seeing, I think, little peaks as far as in between the valleys. One of those, I would say, being Dante Stills, who now has a sack and a half in this game. He's been having a pretty decent season, and now that he's taken over a essentially starting role with Kevin Strong being out, you've been able to see at least also how the defense, once they got Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson back, looked like an adequate defense. It wasn't one of those teams where you're just talking about how teams can just throw at them on will, like in the Bengals game or in the Niners game, where it was just very clear and evident that there was just nothing they could do on the front end or the back end. What's tough is it does really, I think, show for a lot of Cardinals fans that what this team is about is the future. And that's hard to be able to embrace, because even if you're saying, hey, look at how Trey McBride turned out, you may have something Amari DiMercato who's hurt. It's hard to be able to get sold on that when you go out the next week and are saying, all right, we got to go and endure another week of this before we get Kyler Murray back. We've got to endure another off season of this before the draft picks come in. I think that with a lot of fans where we're sitting right now, it really is going to be not just talking, at least I think, about the future in the here and now, but if the Arizona Cardinals are going to be able to turn this around, and it does come from Kyler Murray, that's, I think, going to be probably the biggest takeaway you can have for the future, regardless of what the win-loss record may be for the Cardinals. And in a way, I think that's probably how it's always been.
Yeah, you can imagine like the storylines during the offseason. If he comes back and he puts us in a position where we can't draft like Caleb Williams, well, then you kind of think to yourself, okay, well, then now you have the person that you need to build ahead. And if he comes back and he's like ascending little by little, even if he doesn't start out playing well and he starts playing well towards the end, as you know, the games come along, as he's picking up the tendencies in the offense, which we will discuss, like his footwork today, because that's one of the biggest things that he needs to work on is his footwork. With Kyler Murray just essentially being motivated to get us out of that position, it really is in his hands. I mean, it's in nobody else's hands but Kyler. So we go wherever he goes. If he goes and he starts, you know, taking this offense, and then, you know, we see what Kyler Murray can do with a different type of offense and a different type of system, then it's like, okay, cool. Like, hey, let's build upon that. Let's go get him another weapon in Marvin Harrison Jr. Well, I'm still going to be like, come on, let's rally. Let's just, come on, just get one of the wide receivers that I've wanted every single year. I wanted DK Metcalf first. You didn't get DK Metcalf for whatever reason. And let's see what we can build upon that. But if he comes back and we're losing games and he looks like he's plateaued, or at least he's not getting the hold of it, and he's not like, let's just say when he comes back, they're not putting him under center as often, but then they just keep him at that same position that he's in, then, you know, something's majorly wrong. And at that point, obviously, we have different decisions to make.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a bit about, now that we've kind of wrapped up the Ravens game, the biggest standout I think that we can at least say, and this is something I thought that was a kind of final positive, the Cardinals have had a history of, not since, I believe, 1989, I think, at least, if not earlier, the Cardinals have really not had a 100-yard receiving game from a tight end, especially since their history as the Arizona Cardinals. I believe the last time was as the Phoenix Cardinals. Trey McBride came up 5 yards short from that. Now, there was a lot of it was, you can say, in garbage time, which is the team's losing, you're throwing the ball a ton. But I still believe that production is still production. Like, you could still drop every one of those passes in garbage time. The fact that they were able to get him 10 targets and 95 yards, including his first touchdown of the season, with Zach Ertz on the sideline, it really shows that probably they were giving a little bit to the veteran who, for all we know, this may be his final season. He was injured, unfortunately, so he wasn't really able to be traded to a contender. The fact that they at least have never truly had this sort of a tight end on their roster who can go out and not only be able to produce, but produce at a high level, that's something that's been a weakness for this team, considering that the modern NFL really has guys like George Kittle. It really shows guys like who the Cardinals played in Mark Andrews. And I think that if the Cardinals are able to find the emergence of someone, that I think could be a huge piece of their future moving forward, because, you know, when's the last time we said, hey, the Cardinals drafted a tight end? They're going to extend him into his second year of his deal, and he's going to produce. That's something that we haven't really talked about at all with this team. What are some of your thoughts, Marcos, at least while we wrap up, just kind of reviewing the Ravens game, on what we see from Trey McBride and what maybe we can expect moving forward, since it seems like he may be a much bigger part of the offense now?
Well, I'm going to quote, I'm not sure if I'm quoting the right quarterback for this. It's either Joe Montana or Steve, what is it, the guy who took over for him? I can't believe I'm drawing a blank.
Steve Young. Steve Young.
Okay. So one of those two was asked, what would you prefer? A good wide receiver, a Pro Bowl wide receiver, or a Pro Bowl tight end? And he said a Pro Bowl tight end at any time, because he not only is one that's as good, like, let's just say you have an all-pro or a Pro Bowl tight end who's a good blocking tight end as well, like a George Kittle. You have him out there on the field on every single down, because you don't have to take him off the field, because he's not only one, either he's not a receiving threat or he's just not a good productive blocker. So having one that has the ability to do both, to be a good pass blocker, run blocker, like Trey McBride was when he was coming out of college, but also being a good receiving threat that could run the routes, that's very special, which is why I was very excited when they drafted him. I know a lot of people thought, you know, why are we drafting a tight end? Well, because he's a very special tight end. And if you have one that essentially you don't need to take off the field because he's a good pass blocker, he can hold up with defensive ends and edge rushers for the most part. And he is used in a way where he's a move tight end as well. So that's the H-back. I mean, you can do so much. You can have him run basically the Skoronski. I forgot what. No, it's not Skoronski. It's a wide receiver from the Los Angeles Rams, the one they use as a fullback.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's it. Yeah, that's the one at least for that one. Skoronski, yeah, I think is Peter Skoronski is the one at least that you're talking about here.
I think that's the offensive lineman. The wide receiver is oh my god, it's
Skowronek. It's Ben Skowronek. Yeah, Peter Skoronski is a Tennessee Titan. Ben Skowronek, which is, we saw, I think, earlier this season. There's a great clip, I think, that we had shown earlier. Don't have it on hand right now, where Trey McBride goes, essentially kind of runs in a circle around Josh Dobbs, and then is able to block. So it looks like he's about to run to his left. Instead, he turns to his right, takes out the opposing pass rusher on a chip, and then goes out for a route. It opens up a lot of options, and it's how teams used to use fullbacks in that way. Now teams have realized, if we're going to be able to have a guy who can block like that, it's much more advantageous not to just have a guy back there like an extra offensive lineman, but rather the passing game is changed now where it's about quick and getting guys out, because if you've got better athletes on the field, you'll be able to make use of it. One of the things I think that's really interesting also about Trey McBride is coming out of college, his yards after catch was elite as far as his measurables. That's part of why he was the only tight end that a lot of people gave a first round grade to. He would end up this year so far, he's gotten 133 yards after the catch. Now, it may not seem like it's a whole lot. He's got a total of 265 yards. You realize that means that almost half of his yards are coming after he gets the ball. So he's breaking tackles, he's getting downfield. The other thing that's impressive is we're 8 games through the season. Last year, Trey McBride had 117 yards after the catch the entire 16 games that were played that he was in. For 17 games, he missed one of them due to injury. So you're talking about a guy who he's gotten the ball more this year, but he's already proving that the more he's getting the ball, the more he is producing. And it's a spot where teams are not really able to necessarily stop him one-on-one. He's able to break a tackle, pick up 4 or 5 more yards. And that's part of with Steve Young being that quarterback's best friend, because not only are you going to stop that edge rusher from getting to him, you're going to be open with a nice soft pair of hands ready to catch the ball, and you can pick up 4 to 5 more yards on 3rd and 3 to get that first down. It's a very important part of your modern day offense, and it's part of why the Cardinals offense, I think, has struggled in years past, as we've seen, is they just have never truly had that guy and invested into a player like that, and you're hoping is he'll be able to be around that for the future. One more thing I did want to at least point out also, and this is something that came out just while we wrap up, kind of on maybe the low note from the Ravens game. This was something that popped up after the game, at least, from a Ravens fan named Spencer Schultz, and it was maybe a bit of an embarrassment for the most part for some Cardinals fans. Mark Andrews is a player who I really liked when he was coming out of college, out of Oklahoma, was catching passes from, Baker Mayfield. He was diagnosed with diabetes a while back, and we've seen NFL teams act strange sometimes with those conditions. Jay Cutler was another player. Patrick Peterson, even when he ended up having that was like in the middle of his career. Well, apparently the Cardinals, from what Marlon Humphreys had talked about on his flight back, he releases on his Instagram. They give the game ball to Mark Andrews, a Scottsdale native. They said they thought he was soft and slow in the draft process, which when I watch him, I say, that makes very little sense, because if you're saying that he's slow, like he's a tight end, and then saying that he's a soft player, he is more of a receiver, but he still has shown himself to be a blocker. The fact, I think, of the matter is that he went in the 3rd round. He probably was a 1st to 2nd round worthy tight end. The fact that this is something that seems to be personal for some players against the Cardinals and against what their general management and their teams have said about them, I think it just shows at least partially where Arizona has been and how they're having to do some work to just kind of get back to being a decent franchise in the National Football League. And nowhere, I think, is that going to be more evident than when we can see this on the flip side of Cardinals players who are saying, hey, that team over there, yeah, they said that I was going to be bad. Look what we did against them today.
Yeah, Mark Andrews has shown how soft and slow he is in the NFL by becoming an all-pro tight end and becoming basically the best receiving threat out of that Baltimore Ravens team. And fun fact over here, he led the Ravens in receiving yards the same year that Hollywood Brown got himself his first 1,000-yard season. So he was the lead receiver that averaged more yards per catch than Hollywood Brown, who we think about as a speedster that same year. That's how special he was. That's how good he is as a person who can make that offense basically just run and, have some success. One thing that I definitely want to also point out when it comes to like Trey McBride is him emerging is great when it comes to how defenses have to handle him. It is a nightmare defenses, it's all about like getting as much tells as you can. Like, what formation are they in, and what personnel package are they in, and who's out on the field. So when they see someone like Zach Ertz, who's not known to be a good blocker, or at least a great blocker, they know this is going to be possibly a pass play. And he's probably just not going to hang back most of the time. He's probably just going to run us up the seam. Yeah. So they already take that into account. When you had Max Williams, who was a good receiver for us, but he wasn't known for that. He was known for being more of a
Right.
run blocker, pass blocker. What does the defense think? Oh, well, you know what? They're probably going to run a run play, and Max Williams is onto the strong side. So let's try to shade somebody on the other side because he's not going to be a threat because he's most likely just going to. And we'll give him the route if that's what's going to happen. You have Trey McBride. Now you have both of those situations. So now that's a tail that you take off. What kind of play are they going to run? Well, he's down, lined up right next to the tackle. Well, we don't know if he's going to run up the seam. Now we got to take that into account.
For sure. Now, I do want to say at least we can shift now into looking at this week a bit. Kyler Murray's still out for the Sunday. He was not activated in time, which means that we will have Clayton Tune be the starting quarterback because Josh Dobbs got traded. That's one of the things I think that we'll go over here, but I did want to make sure that we got enough time to do a quick film study. So let's talk a little bit at least about with Kyler Murray because we are expecting now that he's going to be back for this upcoming Atlanta Falcons team. Is there a guarantee? Probably not. But as far as it comes to it, the expectations for Cardinals fans are going to be, we saw how Josh Dobbs was able to be efficient and wasn't really accurate in this system. We've also seen, for the most part, Drew Petzing be able to run a modern NFL offense. It's not like the Cardinals are putting up, like 15, 14 points a game. They're, able to put about 21, 22 points onto the board. Marcos, what are some of the plays you think could be an impact for Kyler Murray, at least that we could see when he does come back? And then we can talk a little bit more about just previewing what the Browns game is going to look like as this weird middle area kind of where it's like, it's like you got Christmas Eve is kind of coming up, but you got to go to like the Christmas Eve service with the candles. And I always remember that because like you get your food afterwards, you got to sit through the Christmas Eve service, you got wax that drips on your fingers. Like that's kind of going to be what this game is for a lot of Cardinals fans before we get to unwrap that present, which is going to be a returning quarterback coming up looking like the following week.
Well, like this is one thing that I noticed watching the four snaps that he was under center that ended up being a pass play. He tends to want to roll out more than he is like, because he's not used to just sitting in the pocket and whatnot. We all know that at some point as a quarterback, if you're turning your back to the defense, you have to turn around and plant your foot down and then just trying to kind of give yourself that area where you're stepping in to help your offensive tackle. So on the first play, I've already shown it before. It's just a Kansas City play. We're not going to delve too much into it or whatnot. It's just simplistic. Like, he like the way he ran. Are we able to pull that up, by the way?
We can.
Oh, there we go. So where he basically snaps the ball, like you'll see the timing's a little bit off. You'll see his back foot kind of go back and then he like grabs the ball. So his timing's already off with his footwork. When he turns around to fake hand off the ball right here. So at this point, he's supposed to plant his foot, kind of go in there. And if you see all the offensive linemen over here, they're in a position where they're going to try to give him that little bit of like cushion over the middle. Now, of course, the pressure gets to him. I believe it was either like, I think it was Justin Pugh that got like beat on this play. And they kind of forced Kyler Murray to just like dump off the ball. But look where he ends up at with Calvin Beachum on his defensive end. He kind of gets right in front of that defensive end, and it makes his job a lot worse when it comes to like defending him because it pretty much just stays. He gets in front of the edge rusher. So now he has to just come into the pocket, and of course the pressure breaks down. The play never even had a chance. So that's the reason why I'm not going to go over it too much because it was more so just showing that if this was a pass play, he's supposed to kind of settle inside the pocket and not go too deep behind and basically put himself right in front of the defensive ends or the edge rushers, because then that makes the tackles, if the tackle knows this is going to be a pass play, then he knows at some certain point he has to, this is how we're going to do this protection with this technique and whatnot. But if he's all the way to the back and you're not expecting him like in the shotgun, when you know he's in the shotgun, you have to kick out further out. But with the pass play where he's going to have to be in that little space where he has to get the most protection, he's not going to kick out too much because he needs to be able to like make sure that this edge rusher doesn't beat him towards the inside if he's settling in the pocket. If he's going to beat him to the outside because my quarterback's still going to be within the pocket, so you're not going to have a chance of being able to hit him. But of course, this is what happened. So that's the first play. Then you're going to see kind of the same thing on the second play that I bring up. This is going to be against the Carolina Panthers. It's kind of like a repeat of what happened here with the first play. Same thing. He rolls out a little bit further out, and he gets in front of his what is it called? Basically, too far out for his offensive lineman to be able to protect him. So it's same thing. We have same rollout. See, he's rolling out right here, and we don't even know if this was even designed to be a rollout or whatnot. We have no idea what the play call is, but the way that the offensive lineman's blocking, once again, it's Calvin Beachum. He's blocking as if he's not kicking out too far out, meaning that like, oh, he's gonna have to settle in the pocket. And of course, that's Brian Burns taking him on. So yeah, he's a pretty big person. So if he's rolling out to that side,
it looks like it might be a screen over here for a little bit, but it's just definitely with how 87 responds. Yeah, it does very much feel like this, as far as for one of those snaps from under center, they're not buying the play fake. Mm-hmm. Like, Burns is not even playing the run. He's just trying to get to Kyler Murray. And that was one of, I think, the biggest criticisms of the Cliff Kingsbury area, is that the air raid system was just not necessarily something that had enough of a play fake that you would be able to actually bite on it to get guys open downfield, or, like you said, to get Kyler Murray time. And he, in this case, I think also, you could say he ran into a bit of pressure by using too long of some steps.
He does like a rollout here instead of doing his and like what this tells me is, one, they don't practice these plays very often, because they probably think to themselves, there's no point. We're never really going to call this very often. So they're obviously going to practice the play calls that they're going to show like over and over and over again on game time. But this play right here, they really haven't had much practice, because you have Rondale Moore closer to the line of scrimmage. You might think that, with Rondale Moore, how he blows up these defensive ends, he's going to use to be able to chip. Max Williams is on the outside shoulder of him. He's a number 2 receiver on the field side. So I'm thinking to myself, well, your tight end usually is the guy who's chipping or taking on, especially someone like Brian Burns, that he's going to be on that side taking on Brian Burns, or at least chipping him, giving some sort of help to Calvin Beachum. And if this was designed as a rollout per se, what they do is they shift protection over to the opposite side of the field, away from the so-called play side, which is the boundary, which is the top side of the screen. They would shift protection that direction, leave Brian Burns unblocked, because they want him to take the bait as if like, oh, I have a free shot at Kyler Murray, where Kyler Murray rolls out and basically has that wide area of protection. And the running back's supposed to fake, like if he's running towards if it's like a stretch play going to the boundary, which is the top side of the screen, Kyler Murray's supposed to meet him there and then just kind of bring himself away from that and then go to the field side, which gives them like a curve, like somewhat of a curve where they can bait Burns into that area. So
it creates a bit of a pocket where then the pass rusher has to be able to get upfield. Murray's got plenty of room to step up, and suddenly Burns is out of the play. Instead, what we see, at least here with this, is that they're trying to see if they can do some sort of either rollout. It does feel like you said, whether it was the practice or the execution, the overall general design of the play feels like it's supposed to be something that Max Williams, if they're trying to get him ready for a bit of a screen, trying to get some guys pulled upfield, it just fundamentally is not a well-designed or well-executed type of a play. It gets blown up pretty quickly. And I think that's something that at least we've seen with the Drew Petzing offense, is that there's enough of design and care into the run game, especially this is a completely static line right now. Like, if you look at the play and go back to where the start of the play was, the line is just static. No one's moving. There isn't any man in motion. If you have a man in motion, then you're able to move into or around one of those gaps. You're able to essentially kind of take some players out of it. This looks like it's almost a designed pass play to be able to get 2 guys onto those out routes, get Kyler on the move. You've got your high-low option. You can see that there's guys that are open, but the problem is that the protections are not there. And so as a result, by keeping everything static, it's basically the play is dead before it even gets going. He just has to throw it at the feet of the receiver. With this Drew Petzing offense, we've seen similar concepts, with the biggest difference being you'll end up seeing a tight end, instead of being split out wide like how 87 has to run backwards, he'll maybe run out of the play, be able to motion, see if a man comes, run back into the play to be able to take on that blocker. That's able to help the quarterback identify the man zone coverage better. It's more of what you would say is a modern type of offense, whereas what we're seeing here is very much kind of a keep everything static, get the ball out quick, and fundamentally the play just gets blown up by a much better pass rusher in Brian Burns.
Yeah, it just screams at me that they really don't practice as much. And I have to make a correction. The number 3 receiver was actually Hollywood Brown. It wasn't Rondell Moore most of the time, because I trust Rondell Moore to be a better, like a good chipper and stuff. But yeah, it just screams to me that like this really wasn't designed well, because they probably thought to themselves, maybe we'll get somebody open. And it did get Rondell Moore. I keep saying Rondell. It did get Hollywood Brown open, but he needed that extra time, not only to be able to get himself in a position where he's going to set his feet and be able to throw it, but go into an area of the pocket where he had enough time to be able to do that and also see the field. Because we also obviously know that like Kyler Murray needs passing lanes to be able to like not only see the receiver, but throw in a position where he's not throwing it and having it batted down or intercepted. So this one just screams to me like they don't care about like, oh yeah, we're not going to run this play very often, so who cares? Like, we're not going to design it well or anything. It could have been a situation where they just try to see if they can get something going, because I mean they've lost to this team tons of, like, too many that they should. So here's another play. I would say this one. Oh, sorry, I didn't upload this one. I was watching it myself. Sorry about that. I'm over here trying to describe it. I was like, you guys can't see it. So this one is Los Angeles. I think this one is a 5-yard completion. It's somewhat designed better, and I mean, you get like 6 or 7 yards. That's fine, I guess. You know, if you're trying to do a pass play from under center, though, you would think that would be more explosive, because you're trying to generate more yardage off these type of plays, because you're sucking the defenders in.
Yeah, so this is it's a layup type of play, essentially. You're not looking for the huge home run. You're just looking at least to kind of pick up a couple of yards. You can at least see you're just taking the flat route. The other guys are pulling the safeties downfield. And we've seen, at least with Zach Ertz, he's not really a guy that will break tackles or get a bunch of yards after the catch. But in this play, if like it was a first down, you're looking at 2nd and 5. You can run the ball, you can throw the ball. It's a layup, and it's a simple part of most any NFL offense, and it's something that we rarely saw under Cliff Kingsbury, which is interesting.
Yeah, and then once again, like, they're not faking too much of the stretch play, but I don't know if that makes much of a difference, because if he was trying to give Kyler Murray just a quick, easy like completion with the read, it's just simple for Kyler Murray just to know that he's going to look like the direction that he's running is going to see Zach Ertz open, because Zach Ertz is going to be the flat receiver, and there's not going to be much when it comes to like any resistance on who's going to defend him. I mean, you see people kind of backing off. You see the linebacker trying to read this play to hope that it's not a run play. Of course, he has to, fit the run. But, once he finds out Kyler Murray still has the ball, I mean, he's going to go cover the flat along with the defensive back. And it's just easy peasy, standard, nothing special type of play to me. So this one, to me, I would be like, well, I mean, that's as standard as it gets. And if Kyler Murray is comfortable enough to run that, obviously you're going to call this play. Last one is one where, I mean, I think about this on a more like, this is where I talk about when I talk about like where he needs to have better work with not only his footwork, but he has to like know what kind of rollout he's essentially doing, and the timing is what we're going to look for here. That's very important, because in the NFL, we all know defenses are faster, windows are much smaller. Obviously, we know that as opposed to college. So this is a design rollout, and you see, it's pretty obvious who's going to be open on this one. I believe this is a 2 receiver concept, and
2-man route.
And you're not even like, there's not multiple reads here. The person that's getting the ball here is Zach Ertz. All DeAndre Hopkins is doing on this play, he's just clearing out that side of the field by running that go route. And so obviously he clears out that side of the field, and it's wide open at this point. Here's what the timing needs to be worked on when it comes to his rollouts. At this point, he knows who his read is. You're going to fake the handoff. You're going to turn around. You're going to run your rollout, and Zach Ertz is going to be open in the middle of the field. Once you know that that's the situation, that's your only read. At some point when you see him, that's when the ball needs to be thrown. Yeah. So, of course, he kind of like takes a little bit longer, and you'll see it
Yeah,
right
it's a
here in
late
the end
throw
zone
for the
angle.
most part, unfortunately.
In the end zone angle, you'll see it right here. Watch when he fakes the handoff, rolls out right here. So right here, he's already knowing, okay, now I need to look for Zach Ertz. I see Zach Ertz. Right here, the ball has to go because the windows are just going to close up like
Yeah.
super fast. Well, right here, he kind of hitches, and then, yeah, that's what
Play
that
gets
gave him
broken up.
that little split second, like just a little split second where he kind of hitches and then throws the ball. Like he kind of like that's all that they needed and whatnot. So in this one, if they practice this one more often, and I believe once again, this one wasn't practiced very often. If this was practiced more often, this would be something that he can build upon to get his confidence of being able to be under center
Yep,
and
and
be
it's
able to
that
do
hitch
that.
that you're talking about too. That's one of the areas of you can't be late over the middle of the field. If
Mm-hmm.
he's even later with that hitch where he hitches twice, that's a pick. Like that's one of the areas of being able to read, react, and like you said, part of the reason why I don't think Kyler Murray has actually gotten in, even if he's been fully healthy and ready to go, is because it's going to take time, and I think there is going to be adjustment periods that you're going to have. Like you said, these are spots where Ertz is trying to find that soft spot in the zone. He slows up a little bit. Perhaps that's part of the reason for the hitch, but at the end of the day, the NFL is ultimately about you have to be able to process, read, react, and make those throws. And that's, I think, what we're going to be looking for film with Kyler Murray in the upcoming weeks where he's going to be playing. But that's awesome, I think, as far as for seeing some of the impact of how he's struggled this far under center. And then I think seeing how the Drew Petzing offense, there are more pieces built in that'll hopefully help him. But at the end of the day, we're going to be evaluating Kyler Murray. If we see more throws like this in the Drew Petzing offense where he's hitching and holding, not confident in what he sees, that's going to go into that decision, at least, that the Cardinals will make for him and his future as well, since they, as it currently stands, still have the highest overall pick for the 2024 NFL draft. Speaking of draft picks, let's transition and talk about the last kind of two topics we have. Josh Dobbs gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings. Per John Gambadoro, Cardinals essentially can get a sixth round pick for him. When Sunday's game came out, they said, yeah, Josh Dobbs is going to be our starter. You also knew Kirk Cousins was out for the year, the torn Achilles. The very next Monday, he said, oh, it's going to be Clayton Tune or Kyler Murray. Everyone's like, oh, Dobbs got benched. There's a lot of Cardinals fans going, finally, we get to see Clayton Tune go in there. I've been wanting to see what it is. Just been awful watching Josh Dobbs. And then a couple hours later, it's like, well, they're actually trading Josh Dobbs away to the Vikings, who are starting a fifth-round rookie themselves in Jaron Hall this upcoming week. It sounds like if the Cardinals are able to see Josh Dobbs play at least half of the remaining games on the Vikings schedule, they gave Josh Dobbs to the Vikings. They got a sixth-round pick, and they gave up a seventh-rounder. They may get that seventh rounder back if Dobbs is able to play majority of the games the rest of this year. I think it's honestly a good move for both teams. The Vikings are in the middle of trying to figure out if they can lock up Justin Jefferson, their star, maybe I'd say maybe, take out the maybe. Tyreek Hill, notwithstanding, the best wide receiver in the National Football League, to a long-term deal. They didn't have any other quarterback on the roster. There's no one else they could have gotten. Arizona, meanwhile, kind of moves down from a draft slot from 5 to 6 by maybe 30 picks or so for an 8-game rental, which brings up the question, was it worth the trade for the Arizona Cardinals to bring in a quarterback like Josh Dobbs, or were we talking about, something that they should have probably just rolled with Clayton Tune or done more in the backup quarterback position in Kyler Murray's absence?
I don't understand why they. I know that Josh Dobbs has gotten a lot of flack and whatnot, and mostly it's because of we're weighing what the offense would look like with Kyler in it, and so that's kind of like driving into like, oh well, if he makes a negative throw, then hey, Kyler Murray would have made that throw. Kyler Murray would have completed that. Kyler Murray would have won us that game. And for a lot of people, we don't know what's going to happen because Kyler Murray's not out there, so we don't know what this offense or anything is looking like or what the possibilities are. Is Kyler Murray more talented? By far. He's way more talented than Josh Dobbs is, but more so goes into like less about the whole talent and more about like the scheme, more about like, hey, you can make every throw on the field. Doesn't mean you're going to complete them, but if he's able to complete them, that's what we're striving for. So I think that kind of like made it so that it's like, Josh Dobbs is just he's a horrible quarterback. Let's get rid of him and whatnot. I think he handled himself really well for the preparation that he had. he wasn't the perfect quarterback, and he made some dumb throws, especially against the Ravens, that really cost us some games. But I mean, we're talking about a quarterback that shouldn't even been like starting to begin with, and he's out there taking snaps and making some pretty good throws and making some pretty good plays when he has the opportunity to. So as a backup, why even get rid of him? You gave up a 5th round for it, which you got from trading Josh Jones away. Then you gave up Josh Jones, which I still won't understand. And you traded away Josh Dobbs and you got yourself a 6th rounder. So I'm like thinking to myself, like, why even give him away then? I mean, don't start him. Let's let Clayton Tune get in there. Because I was excited about Clayton Tune. I wanted Clayton Tune to start from the beginning. I have no idea what the whole situation was, why they didn't trust him. I mean, it was going to be bad either way. So I thought at first they're going to put Josh Dobbs out there because they're trying to lose. Well, after a couple of games, I'm like, well, I mean, it's not like they're trying, but like it's still not doing anything. And now we have Clayton Tune taking his one snap. As one game, I mean, first snap against the Cleveland Browns. First time. I think to myself, that's putting your rookie out there to like pretty much get his head cut off because he's going up against Myles Garrett in that defense, and he hasn't had enough live snaps to be able to practice. If they were even thinking about this, why not just bench Josh Dobbs maybe 5 games ago?
Right.
You knew, you weren't going to get much wins. Let your rookie take some snaps. We got to see what we have in him because we invested a pick in him. So we invested a pick. We know that going forward, he's going to be the backup quarterback to Kyler Murray. So I don't understand that decision at all. But
I think that's I was going to say I think that's
what Clayton Tune has.
I'm excited too, and I think that's why they're making this move. From what we at least found out from what at least Gambadoro said and what made sense to me is Clayton Tune was going to be your backup the rest of the season. That meant Dobbs was going to be moved to quarterback 3 once Kyler Murray came back because you wanted to see, can Clayton Tune be a long-term backup for you heading into 2024 or 2025? I saw enough in the preseason where my gut feeling was, hey, there's enough upside here that maybe he could end up being a long-term type of backup. We don't know if he's going to get to that Colt McCoy or that, call them legacy backup range, where it's like he's just a backup quarterback traveling from team to team, making money. Like, we don't know if it's that range yet. But I think we would have wanted to see him go in, plan for the week, and if you had Josh Dobbs there, you're probably not going to ever get a chance to evaluate Clayton Tune, at least heading into 2024, to know if that's a need or not. I was fine with going into the season saying, hey, you're trying to build a winning culture. If Dobbs is the better quarterback than Tune, you keep playing him for the most part. And I think that the necessity, or I should say more the opportunity arose to be able to say, hey, Josh Dobbs was more of a rental quarterback anyway because Colt McCoy, he just didn't work out. Let's go ahead and we can move him off the roster, give him to another team in the Minnesota Vikings who, let's be real, may be also in this tank fest for the most part. Josh Dobbs may actually help keep them out of some of the tank fest for the most part. They're not going to win a lot of games with him, but it's not like they're going to lose every single game by 30 points the rest of the season if Josh Dobbs is your quarterback. We at least have seen that from him while he's been here in Arizona. I think that, like you said, at the end of the day, though, this is always kind of a game of if Kyler was going to be healthy, you're like, are you really wanting to, like, make sure that he's going to start on the road outdoors against the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL? Now, they're not number 1 in points. That was the Baltimore Ravens, but this is a ferocious team. And so it does feel almost like you're kind of like, all right, Clayton, we're just going to kind of throw you to the wolves more just so we can protect Kyler long term, while at the same time, hey, you're going to have some tape. Is he going to execute some of the play action fakes? Is he going to get the play calls into everyone? Is he going to be able to make calls at the line? There is some evaluation that can be done. I think that a lot of it, though, just turns into, hey, with Kyler being ready to go, you are going to be essentially kind of treating him like the sacrificial lamb, unfortunately, for at least 1 week. And I think at the end of the day, the question is, did Josh Dobbs do his duty? And I think if the duty was to win football games, the answer is no. But I don't think that the Cardinals have gone into this year with the expectation that they're in a place to win football games. I think that what we got to see with Josh Dobbs, they lost games respectably, and I think they got one more win with Josh Dobbs than they probably would have with the Clayton Tune. We won't know for sure. Maybe we're talking about a surprise Cardinals win for whatever reason, at least on the following Monday. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think that he did the job of, it wasn't like you were essentially sitting there completely embarrassed, saying that this is like the least functional offense of all time, worth having to throw a rookie 5th-rounder out there. Would have gotten kind of handed to the Wolves. Now you've at least got about 7 or 8 games that he's had experience enough to be able to go out there. I think that it worked out fine for Arizona. I just think at the end of the day, the expectation is, let's be kind of frank about this, it wasn't necessarily to win games, and if you want to call that tanking by the Arizona Cardinals, like, they've kind of done that job so far. They're 1-7. The only reason why they're ranked ahead of the Carolina Panthers is because the Panthers have one less game that they've played than the Cardinals. They're 1-6, and Arizona's 1-7. And if you wanted to say that the Cardinals went into this season not necessarily attempting to win games, I think that's fair. But I don't think that they went into games not competing. And so now this is a game in which it feels like they may know that they're not going to be competing against the Browns. But at this point, the season doesn't even come down to a game against the Browns. It doesn't come down to even the rest of the games on the schedule. I think it comes down to, is Kyler Murray your franchise quarterback? And are you going to be able to put faith in him to help turn this ship around? And at the end of the day, if Clayton Tune is a piece toward and a step toward that, then I feel kind of sorry for the kid, but also like, hey, let's see what you have, kid. And if we need another backup quarterback for next year because you throw 3 pick sixes on your first 3 pass attempts or something like terrible and ridiculous, a lot of fans would like to know that ahead of time. I'm one of those fans who would prefer to not sacrifice a guy too, but at the end of the day, this is kind of where you are as a Cardinals fan, and you're going to root the best that you can for the kid. And so as far as it goes, I know the Toon Squad, I think, is what people are calling it this far, like the Looney Tunes from from the Space Jam, I believe, or other, I should say, years of Looney Tunes. But what are your thoughts, at least, on what we can expect from Clayton Tune coming up against the Browns as we kind of wrap up today, and then maybe just expectations for Kyler next week?
I think he's going to light it up. He's going to throw for like 500 yards and probably like 5 touchdowns. He'll have one of those games where like teams will all of a sudden start calling to try to see if they can trade for him. No, I'm just joking. Honestly, like it's a hard tell to be able to evaluate Clayton Tune, because if he has a bad game, it's like, well, that's a really good defense he's going up against. And that's his first game taking live snaps in a like a regular season like setting, because we know what the difference is between that and preseason. I know that he can make some throws. I know that he can take it from under center and execute the play action pass, because we've seen him do it. But we've seen him do it with Greg Dortch on the field, and we don't even know if we're even going to see him on the field because they never want to play him. So he's going to have different players to throw to. And so that chemistry that he had with the one receiver that he did have success with during the preseason, well, he's not going to be out there. So he's going to have to develop chemistry with different receivers, and maybe you could say that's an upgrade. That's we'll see how that goes. As far as like tight end, I think that is an upgrade. I think for outside receivers, depending on who you have out there, if you have Rondell Moore, he's just not going to be useful because he's just going to be a gadget guy. So
use him as a running back, bro. That's what I said. Just hand the ball off to him as a running back. Amari DiMercado out for this Sunday's game. It's just you're going in with like a pistol, and you got a tank on the other side. At least is how it kind of feels like for poor Clayton Tune.
I mean, might as well. Like, that's the best usage you got for him. He looks like a running back. He can shift like a running back. He's like a little ball bearing that can like somehow like surprisingly light up like cornerbacks and even like linebackers that they don't expect him to be able to do that. He'll catch him off guard, but I mean, you might as well just like try to play him in that role. But that at least you can get Greg Dortch out there for Clayton Tune. So if I was Clayton Tune, I'd probably push to be like, hey, can you guys give him some snaps out there? He's the guy I have the most familiarity with. So if you guys want me to be able to complete some passes downfield, please just give him some snaps. But yeah, I think he's gonna have a rough time. I think he might throw his first interception this game. I think he's gonna maybe lead some drives, but that's gonna be hard, especially going up against this defense. So it's gonna be rough.
Yep, for sure. We'll see how the game plan, see where it goes, and we'll be back next week to talk all about Kyler Murray and the impending return, how it'll shape up against the Falcons, who have a new starter at quarterback as well in Taylor Heineke. I'm honestly excited, at least. We'll probably be able to delve a little bit more into just the expectations that we're going to be seeing, what we're looking for. and it's going to be a big, fun week. Real quick before we log off today here, if you want to go ahead and shout out your content or anything else that you have for those who are listening, and thank you guys for putting up with. I've just had a sinus procedure, so it's not quite like a flu game or anything like that for the most part, but my voice has definitely been a bit scratchy, I know, at least for this week, so appreciate you guys for sticking through with us. Marcos, if you want to go ahead and kind of preach the good word about where viewers can find your content.
You guys can find me at AZ Sports Underground. At least we'll be able to see the article of mostly articles about Isaiah Simmons, but you'll see more defensive side. The defensive side, I do explain on one of my articles about the apex position, which is very important today's NFL. So you can find that there. You can also find me at Pancake Soul on the X, the X app. You can find me there. Go ahead and follow me. If you don't, then you guys can at least check out my content. I will probably get into an argument with you at some point, but I mean, it is what it is.
Absolutely. And then you can follow always at least the podcast at Red Bird Reboot, as well as at revengeofthebirds.com. Hey, for Marcos, I'm Blake Murphy 7. That's it for the Red Bird Reboot. Until it's time for us to log off. Until next week, everyone, take care.